For nearly 40 years, a rusted cargo steamer haunted the most lethal water on Earth. Out of the fog it would appear, drifting silently through the ice. And when sailors rowed out and climbed aboard, they found no one, no crew, no captain, no log, just an empty ship, frozen and abandoned, that should have sunk decades ago. And then, before they could claim it, the ice and the fog would take it again, and it would be gone. They called it the ghost ship of the Arctic. Its name was the Baychimo, and the strangest part of its story isn't that it was haunted. It's that, for 38 years, this abandoned ship simply refused to die. To understand how that's even possible, you have to look at the water it was lost in, because the Arctic Ocean does not behave like any other sea on Earth. But first, how does a ship lose its entire crew and keep sailing alone? The Baychimo was no ghost to begin with. She was a sturdy steel cargo steamer, around 1,300 tons, built in 1914 and owned by the Hudson's Bay Company. Her job was simple and brutal: sail the top of the world, trading supplies for furs in the remote settlements of the Canadian and Alaskan Arctic. By the autumn of 1931, she was heading home, her hold packed with a small fortune in fur. She never made it. On the 1st of October, off the Alaskan coast near Point Barrow, the pack ice closed around her and locked her in place. The crew waited. The ice did not let go. As the temperature crashed and the long Arctic night came on, the Hudson's Bay Company made a hard call. They sent aircraft and flew most of the crew, 22 men, out. But 15 stayed behind, building a small wooden shelter on the ice nearby, determined to wait out the winter and save the ship and her cargo. Then, on the 24th of November, a blizzard hit. For days, the wind and snow were so violent the men could do nothing but huddle in their shelter and survive. When it finally broke and they looked out toward the ship, the Baychimo was gone. The ice where she had been trapped was empty. The captain reached the only logical conclusion. She had been crushed and dragged under, out in the storm. The ghost ship was, as far as anyone knew, simply a shipwreck. Except she wasn't. A few days later, an Inuk seal hunter found the men and told them something impossible. He had seen their ship, whole, afloat, drifting, about 45 miles away. Quick thing, if a ghost ship that refuses to die is your kind of story, subscribe to Vanished North. Real disappearances from the far north are all we do. Now, back to the Baychimo. The men tracked her down and found her battered but intact. The company salvaged the most valuable furs, but the ship herself was damaged, far from any port, and winter was closing in. So they made the decision that would echo for decades. They left her. They walked away, certain the next storm would finish what the first had started. The next storm didn't. Neither did the one after that. Instead, the Baychimo began to wander. With no one aboard, no engine running, no hand on the wheel, she drifted through the Arctic, carried by the ice and the current. And every so often, out of the white, she would simply appear. In 1932, a prospector found her and went aboard. In 1933, according to accounts from the time, a group of Inupiat hunters climbed onto her deck, and a sudden storm trapped them on the empty ghost ship for several days before they could escape. She was seen in 1934, in 1935. In 1939, a crew boarded her and tried to free her from the ice, only to have the weather turn and force them to flee before she slipped away again. Think about that. For nearly a decade, she wasn't just a ghost. She was a trap. Over and over, for years, people found her, stepped onto her silent deck, and then lost her to the fog. No one ever managed to bring her in. Each time, the Arctic took her back. By the 1940s and 50s, hunters and sailors all along the northern coast knew the stories. A derelict ship, no crew, appearing and vanishing across hundreds of miles of frozen sea. The ghost ship of the Arctic. And she just kept going, year after year, long after everyone who had ever sailed her was gone. The last confirmed sighting came in 1969, 38 years after she was abandoned. A group of Inuit reported seeing her frozen fast in the pack ice off the Alaskan coast, in the stretch between Point Barrow and Icy Cape. And then the Baychimo, the ship that refused to sink, was never reliably seen again. So how does an empty steel ship survive, alone, in one of the most destructive oceans on the planet, for nearly 4 decades? It isn't a curse, and it isn't a miracle. What kept the Baychimo alive was a massive hidden machine turning slowly beneath the ice. The first answer is the water itself. The Western Arctic is dominated by something called the Beaufort Gyre, a vast, slow, clockwise current that turns endlessly, like a giant whirlpool, trapping ice and anything frozen into it and carrying it around and around in a loop. A derelict ship caught in that gyre wouldn't simply drift off into deep water and sink. It would be held, circulated through the same regions, season after season. Which helps explain why the Baychimo kept reappearing off the same stretches of coast, again and again, for decades. The second answer is the ice. In open ocean, a damaged, abandoned ship takes on water and goes down. But the Baychimo was almost never in open water. For most of those 38 years, she was locked into the pack ice, frozen in, held up, even cradled by it. The same ice that should have crushed her was, much of the time, the thing keeping her afloat, sealing her hull, carrying her like a piece of the floe itself. She wasn't sailing the Arctic. She had become part of it. There was nothing supernatural about it. No curse, no haunting. Just a well-built steel hull, a relentless circular current, and an ocean cold enough to freeze a ship into something almost permanent. So where is she now? Most likely, time in the cold finally did what the storms never could. Every year, the Arctic ice freezes and thaws, expands and contracts, and a steel hull caught in that cycle is slowly worked apart, season after season. Somewhere out in the Beaufort or the Chukchi Sea, the Baychimo most likely weakened, flooded, and slipped quietly beneath the ice, alone, with no one to see her go. But here is the thing. No wreck has ever been found. In 2006, Alaskan authorities launched an official effort to locate her and came up with nothing. So while the likeliest answer is that she finally sank, the truth is we don't actually know. There is no confirmed grave. There is only a ship that vanished from a frozen sea, last seen drifting and never accounted for. Maybe she's on the bottom. Or maybe somewhere in the endless ice of the far north, a rusted steel hull is still locked in the pack, still turning slowly with the gyre, still waiting in the fog for someone to find her. So what do you think happened to the Baychimo? Crushed and sunk, or still out there in the ice? Leave your theory in the comments. And for more legends and disappearances from the far north, subscribe to Vanish North.